Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
First of all, thank you very much having this chat. I appreciate you giving your time, and
Absolutely.
I know you must be pretty busy.
Not any more than you. So
It's a bit surreal that everything is locked up. I mean, it
is that.
Yeah.
It's surreal, but also just frightening. I mean, because I think it's not that anybody actually knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and you have kids, so how are they finding this?
My daughter is a little stir crazy. She wants to be with her friends. My son, he's younger and he's more happy to have a parent at hand at all times, basically, etc. So for him, it's not a bad thing.
But there is a full lockdown there, so they can't go out at all.
Oh, no, we can go out. We can walk around. There's no restriction on walking, for example, or cycling, or even driving. It's just you're not supposed to get together with more than, I don't know, some number of people.
Before I start, I've got a curiosity.
Yeah.
You got the Nobel Prize. Were you expecting it, or did it come out of the blue completely?
Completely came out of the blue. It was not. I mean, I think that it's one of these things that if you spend time worrying about it, you could obsess a lot.
Yes.
And I'm reasonably good at not obsessing about things that don't have an immediate impact on my life. So I had no premonition or expectation or thought about it. It was completely a surprise.
I mean, it was quite a big deal for us in India. We made you made us quite proud of.
Thank you, but I mean, it's a big deal. I wasn't saying it's not a big deal. I just think that you can obsess about it, but it's not that there is a process for it that is understood by anybody. So whatever, anything can happen.
So one of the main things I wanted to discuss with you is the impact of COVID and the lockdown and the economic devastation on our poor people, and how we should be thinking about it. I mean, we've had in India for some time a policy framework, particularly when we were in the UPA, of providing a sort of a floor for poor people, Narega, right to food, etc. And now a lot of that work is going to sort of fall by the wayside because we have this disease coming, and millions and millions of people are going to fall back into poverty. So this is something. I mean, how should one think about this?
Right. So I think that these are kind of separable in my view, in the sense that I think that the real problem in the very short run is that these, I think, more good policies put in place by the UPA are inadequate. And the government, in a sense, absolutely embraced them. I mean, it was not that there was a particular partisan disagreement there. There was very clear that the UPA instruments will be used for doing whatever it is. I think what is harder to wrap one's head around is what do you do about the people who are not covered by that? And that's a lot of people, the migrants in particular. One of the ideas that was mooted, I think, in the last years of the UPA, but also embraced by the current government, was the idea that the Aadhaar would be made national and therefore would be used for PDS and other things. So the Aadhaar-based claims on PDS would be eligible. You would be eligible for it wherever you are. And that would have been wonderful to have that right now. Sort of looking back, I would say that would have saved a lot of misery, because I think a lot of people would have then gone to the local ration shop and said, here's my Aadhaar. I'm eligible for PDS. I'm collecting PDS in Mumbai, even though my family resides in Malda or Darbhanga or whatever. That's my claim. And so I think the fact that that didn't happen means that there's a bunch of people for whom there isn't really a system.
Mhm.
And they are eligible to Narega because they are in Bombay, and there's no Narega in Bombay. They're not eligible for PDS because they're not actually residents. Part of the problem in the very short run is that the conceptualization of the welfare structure was based on the idea that anybody who's really not in where they're supposed to be is actually working and is earning an income, and therefore we don't have to worry about them. And that's what's collapsed. And then the question of poverty, it's not obvious to me that if the economy revives, there needs to be a durable effect on poverty. The real concerns are, will the economy revive? And in particular, how does one think through the possible time paths of this disease through that process? I think we should try to be optimistic about the survival of the overall economic well-being of the country.
But
We need to take the right actions.
lot of these people, they get their jobs from sort of small and medium businesses who are going to have a sort of cash flow problem, and a lot of those businesses are going to go bankrupt because of the shock. So there is also a link between the economic damage that is going to come to those businessmen and the ability of these people to maintain a job.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the reason why a lot of us have been saying that we need a stimulus package.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the US is doing. That's what Japan is doing. That's what Europe is doing. We really haven't decided on a large enough stimulus package. We're still talking about 1% of GDP or something. The US has gone for 10% of GDP. But there's a sense in which I think we have to, the MSME sector, mostly the easier, we have done one thing that I think is wise, which is to kind of put a moratorium on debt payments. I would say we could do more than that. We could even say that the debt payments for this quarter will be cancelled and will be taken care of by the government. So we could do a bit more than that, so that you don't actually have to pay for a quarter where you never pay. It's not just a matter of rescheduling it, just permanently cancel it. We could do that, but beyond that, I think it's not clear that targeting the MSME sector is the right channel. It's more reviving demand, giving money in the hands of everybody so that they go buy in the stores or they buy consumer goods. The MSME sector produces a bunch of stuff that people will want. They've been not buying things. So if they had money, or even if you promise them money, it doesn't have to be that money is right now. If you're in the red zone, you could say, look, whenever it's lifted, we'll have money in your account. You'll have 10,000 rupees in your account and you can spend it. I think spending is the easiest way to revive the economy, because then the MSME people, they get money, they spend it. It sort of has the usual Keynesian chain reaction.
So we are talking about some version of Nyay, or a direct cash transfer to the poorest people.
Absolutely, a direct cash transfer. Whether it's to the poorest people, that's more debatable. I would argue for a broader, because I think targeting is extremely costly.
Yeah,
you try to target in this mess. You try to target and figure out who's become poor after their shop was shut for 6 weeks. I don't know how we figure this out. I wouldn't try to figure it out. I would say, bottom 60% of the population, we give them some money. Nothing bad will happen, in my view. That if we gave them some money, well, some of them will not need it, but fine, they'll spend it. And if they spend it, that will have stimulus effect. So the only place where maybe I'm more aggressive than you are in that sentence is that I think I would go beyond the poorest people.
So you're talking for a massive priming of the pump upfront. So you start up the demand as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm absolutely saying that. I've been saying that for a while, actually. Even before this happened, I've been saying that we have a demand problem. Now we going to have a bigger demand problem, because it's the usual thing. I have no money. I'm not buying anything because my shop is closed, but then your shop is closed because I'm not buying anything from you. So I think...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And I think implicit in what you're saying is that you need to do it faster rather than slower. So the faster you do it, the more effective it's going to be.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be.
every second lost is actually damaging.
You're right in saying I want it fast. I don't want to have us checking everybody's locus standi and whether they're appropriate for this or not. I do think that it may be we shouldn't induce a mismatch of supply and demand by giving people spending power where we have shut down the entire retail sector because they are in the red zone or something. So we need to plan that a bit better than, so that there's you get the money when you can go out and buy, not now. Or you get a promise. You get a promise that you will get the money, so you stop panicking, you stop completely, starving yourself because you want to have a little bit of savings left. So if people were reassured that, in 2 months or whenever the lockdown will be lifted, they're going to have some money in their hands, I think they would be much less worried about it, and they'll be more willing to spend already. And some of them have some savings; they'll spend it. So I feel that we shouldn't necessarily rush into it, because there may be places where there's no production right now, there's no supply right now. So putting money in will just burn the money. There'll be inflation. We want to wait for that, but with that caveat, yes, soon.
And so the next point is that the sooner you're able to come out of a total lockdown, the better it is. And then you need a strategy for that begins to sort of start up parts of the economy quickly. Otherwise,
yes.
You've got the money is useless then.
Correct. So I think sooner you come out of a lockdown, of course, depends very much on the disease. You don't want to take off the lockdown just when a lot of people are getting sick. So it's absolutely, that's absolutely right. We have to kind of be aware of the time path of the disease in taking that decision.
The other thing that is slightly different in India is that the food issue and the scale of the food issue.
Yeah.
So we have large numbers of people who don't have ration cards. There's an argument being made, just hand out what is in the godams, because it's going to get more and more full as the harvests come in. So just move aggressively on that. What do you think of that?
We in fact wrote an op-ed with Raghu, Rajan and Amartya Sen saying literally that, which is hand out temporary ration cards to anybody who wants one. In fact, put all other ration cards in abeyance. Just put temporary, anybody wants one, and it's a temporary ration card, lasts for 3 months for now, and maybe renewed for another 3 months if necessary, and honor that. So give everybody a ration card. Anybody walks in, give them one, and use that as the basis for making transfers. I think we have enough stocks. We can keep going for a while. The Rabi crop has been good this time, so we're going to have tons of wheat and rice. So at least wheat and rice we can keep giving out. I don't know whether we have enough dal or not, but I think that the government promised dal as well, and so hopefully we have enough dal and oil and cooking oil. But yes, absolutely, we can definitely do that and should really do that. Give out temporary ration cards to everybody.
And what else would you think should be on the sort of the package that the government is thinking about? I mean, we've spoken about small and medium. We've spoken about migrant labor, about the food issue. Any other things that you feel should be on that?
I think the last piece of this is just, I think, for the people who, to get cash to people, we really need some machinery. We can't really get cash to people. And people who have the Jan Dhan accounts, they can get the money, but many people don't. And especially, migrants may not have the access to that, etc. So I think we want to also think about what happens to the substantial part of the population that doesn't have access to these things. And probably the right answer is that we should give a bunch of money available to the state governments to try out their own schemes, to be creative in reaching people who are excluded and using NGOs. I think that we have to be willing to take some amount of, mistargeting, malfeasance. Some money will be stolen, but I think if we sit on our hands and say that we don't want to do anything that's going to possibly go wrong, then I think we'll make sure it goes wrong in a sense.
There is a balance between the centralization and the decentralization aspects. I mean, it's true that each state has its own nuances. Kerala is doing something completely different. Uttar Pradesh is doing something completely different. But then the central government also has a particular role that they have to play. And there's a tension I can see between these two ideas.
You're completely right that this is a tension, and clearly the migrant movement question cannot be handled by a state government. It's a little bit odd that it's being handled so much bilaterally that, in a sense, I feel that that's a problem, because this is a place where you don't want to decentralize because you want to actually aggregate the information. If this is a population of people who are very infected, you don't want them to be moving through the whole country. And so I feel that that's a place where we should have tested people before they're allowed to board a train or something. Yeah. So that's a central question. Yeah. That's something that only a federal government can do. Is tell the government of UP that you cannot just bring your migrants home. Conversely, I think the question of how to serve migrants in Bombay city is the Maharashtra government's problem, and or the Bombay city municipality's problem. And you can't have the federal government resolving that. So I think that you're exactly right. But I mean, what's your thought on that? Right now, it seems like we are sort of it seems like it's something that can't possibly be resolved. In the longer run, I think we need to think of, institutions which are more robust in that way. But right now, I don't see what we can do about it.
I mean, I feel that you have to create option value. So decentralizing as much of it as possible, which they can handle at the local level, is, in my view, a good thing. So the tendency should be to sort of parcel out things that can be managed at the district level and at the state level. Of course, there are some things that, district magistrates can't decide about airlines and about, railways and stuff. So I feel that the big decisions should be national. And then even on the lockdown front, leeway should be given to the states. That is, if you want to lock down, you want to understand the nature of your lockdown, you please do your lockdown. So you give option value to the state, and the state can say, okay, actually, I'll do this and I won't do that. And the risk sort of comes on the state, and then they manage it better. That would be how I would think about it. But I think the current government has a slightly different view. They prefer to sort of manage and see the thing and centralize the thing. I mean, there are two perspectives. I don't necessarily think one is wrong and one is right. I veer towards the decentralization.
I think that's what I would have done, is announced a bunch of money available for proposing good schemes for reaching the poorest people, and let states innovate. I mean, this is really, and I think there are good NGOs in most states who can be brought into that process, and as you say, the district magistrates often have great ideas, and we might as well benefit from all of that. So,
are there some experiences in other countries that you found interesting?
So, I'll tell you one thing that Indonesia is doing right now. Indonesia has decided that it's going to give out, cash transfers, and it's going to give it entirely through a community decision-making process. So the community is going to decide who are the people who are needy, and choose them for the transfers. And I mean, we've worked with the Indonesian government on exactly this issue many years ago, and we find that it doesn't do any worse than the centralized targeting. Is you don't get captured by special interests or anything, and in fact, what you get is people make judgments about what is appropriate in a much more locally nuanced way.
In India, of
so
course,
I think that that's an experience we could learn from. They have very much gone in the direction of using, telling the community, here's some money, give it to the ones who are the most needy. And that's probably, and in an emergency, that's a good policy for sure, I think. Because at least the community has some information that wouldn't possibly centralize.
You would run into the sort of dominant caste problem, where the dominant caste would try and sort of shape that money flow.
Maybe, but on the other hand, you'd worry that if you in the process of trying to prevent that, I would rather put in place extra money to allow for that than to try to figure out who are the deserving people in the village. It just seems to me, I think the one that drives a bit in the direction of what I think you've been saying and the government has also been saying, which is try to widen the reach of PDS. And that's clearly right, and make them basically quasi-universal. So that's one way to avoid that. But if you want to do more than that, to get cash to people, and some people have these Jandan accounts and others don't. Some people are in NRDGA roles. That's another way to get cash to people. And some are not. Some are on the Ujjwala lists, and some are not. Once you got through those lists, you still find that there is a bunch of people, many, many, many millions who are excluded. And how do you serve those people? And for that, it's clear that there should be some funds available to some very local authority who can identify those people and serve them. And I don't disagree with you that there might be elite capture of some form or the other. We worried about that a lot in Indonesia when we were working there. In fact, found not much evidence for it, to be honest. I think we'll have to sort of take a chance that some of this will go wrong. But I think if we don't take a chance, we'll surely get it wrong.
So be brave, basically.
Yeah.
Take few risks because we are in a bad situation.
When you're in dire straits, then I think being brave is the only option, really.
And how do you see this thing playing out, once the disease washes out 6 months from now, from the poverty aspect? There's obviously going to be a backlash, economic backlash. There's going to be bankruptcies. How do we sort of think of it in the medium term as opposed to the immediate short term?
Right. So that's sort of what we were talking about a little bit before, which is, this question of, I think, a demand shortfall. I think that's there are two concerns. One is how to avoid a chain of bankruptcies. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe writing off a lot of debt is the way to avoid that, as you had mentioned. The other one is a demand shortfall, and getting some cash into the hands of the population is the best way to kickstart the economy. The US is very aggressively doing that, and this is a Republican administration run by a bunch of financiers, in fact, and they are willing to do it where we should be willing. This is not run by like a bunch of socially minded liberals. It's run by people who used to work in the financial sector, but they've decided that just for economic survival of the economy, we need to pump money into people's hands. And I think we should take a cue from that.
This is also changing the sort of balance of power in the world to an extent. That is also pretty clear. How do you think about that?
I think that both of them are right. I'm very worried for countries like France and Italy, which especially Italy, I think, had a fairly disastrous outcome, and partly that's a result of the state being the Italian state has been run by, really, not very, let's say, distinguished people for a while, and as a result, it's sort of the health system was on the last legs when this hit. The US moving much more in a nationalist direction is extremely frightening for the world, for the rise of China being a threat, but if the US starts reacting to it, it could be extremely destabilizing threat. So I think that's that's something to worry about a lot.
The undercurrent is that strong leaders can take on this virus. What is being sold is that it requires one man to charge into, against the virus. That's really the problem.
That has been disastrous, as we know. I mean, the US and Brazil are two countries which are just messing up right and left. And these are two quote unquote strong men behaving like they pretending that they understand anything, but even what they say every day is kind of laughable. So we have this, if anybody wanted to believe in the strongman theory, this is the time to disabuse themselves.
Thank you very much. And
thank you. That was a pleasure.
Please, when you're in India, let's have a cup of tea or something.
Yes, that would be lovely.
Yeah. And regards to everyone at home.
Yes, likewise. And take care of yourself.